the great blessing of giving someone iftar, giving them food to break their fast with at the time of Maghrib. Immense blessings. The Prophet said, anyone who gives someone to break their something to someone who's fasting, iftar, will have their sins forgiven. Will be blessed with Jannah because they're saved from hellfire. And will receive a reward equal to the fasting person without reducing the rewards of that fasting person in any way. So the fasting person received their reward without any reduction. But you also receive the same amount of reward because you feed them. You give them food to break their fast with. After they finish that day of fasting, that at the time of Maghrib at sunset, they can break their fast and they can have dinner. They can have food to eat after that long day of fasting, and you provide that food for them. You get the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now some of the followers of the Prophet ﷺ says, not all of us may find food to share with someone so that that person can break their fast. And the Prophet ﷺ responded, Allah will reward you even if you help the fasting Muslim to break his or her fast with a date or a sip of water or a drink of milk. Subhanallah. Even something small, a date or a few dates, a drink of water, a glass of milk. Even if we provide that for them, we still receive rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, in this advice of the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't say that we should provide iftar only for poor Muslims who are fasting. It's anyone who is fasting, including someone who can afford to feed themselves. In this month of Ramadan, they can provide themselves with food. But that's not the point. It is to give people who are fasting iftar. Because in addition to the blessings that we receive, there's also the community spirit that should be developed in this month of Ramadan, where Muslims can meet one another in the masjids, that they can leave their homes and go to the masjid before Maghrib, and they can break their fast in the masjid at the time of Maghrib, and then pray Salat al-Maghrib, and after Maghrib have dinner, after they would spend that day fasting. And so the community, the parents and children, the entire family can converge on the masjid every day throughout this blessed month of Ramadan. And Muslims can gather together and meet one another and get to know one another well and build that healthy relationship amongst themselves. And this is important for us to do. And the Prophet ﷺ was extremely concerned about Muslims coming together. And so the way the Sharia, the law of Islam is designed, it is to get us to come together as often as possible. And so 5 times every day, we are invited to come together in the houses of Allah, in the masjids, to perform the Fard Salah. And if we're not able to do that all the time because of our preoccupations, and we have to pray at work or at home and so on, but once every week, every Friday, the community is invited to come together in the house of Allah, in the masjid, for this weekly gathering that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites us to. And then for Eid al-Fitr, the entire community is invited to come together again for this annual meeting, for Eid al-Adha. And in a similar way now, in the nights of Ramadan, at the time of iftar. And so the Prophet ﷺ encourages us to participate in this iftar program, to sponsor iftars, to invite others for iftar, to build that community spirit. And I hope, inshallah, that all of us can strive to do this throughout this month of Ramadan, to bring people together. And the best place you can be in is the masjid. It's in the masjid. And so let us all try to be in the masjids, wherever we are, in any country, in any city, wherever we are. Try to go to the masjids and invite your family members, invite your relatives, invite all your friends to come along with you, and even your non-Muslim friends. Invite them to come out to the masjid in this month of Ramadan and to participate in iftar. They are not fasting, but invite them to participate in that dinner, to give them food, let them enjoy the iftar dinners with you, and let them see what we as Muslims do in this blessed month of Ramadan. And so the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to engage in this iftar program during this month of Ramadan. In addition to that, the management, the administration of the masjid should do something in this month of Ramadan. We can call it an open house that we can have in our masjids. Wherever you are, whichever masjid you go to, try to arrange this where you can have a special iftar dinner sometime in the month of Ramadan on a day that's convenient, and invite the non-Muslims in your community to come out and participate in that iftar program. A special evening for the non-Muslims. The leaders in the community leaders, leaders of other faith groups, other religious groups, the leaders of different organizations in the community, and so on. Invite them to come out and be with you and enjoy this iftar program in the month of Ramadan. And try to reach out to the poor people in society and invite them to come out in this blessed month of Ramadan to enjoy this iftar program. The Prophet ﷺ has told us about the great benefits of preparing iftar for others in this blessed month of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ continued in his khutbah. He said that this month of Ramadan, its beginning is mercy, its middle part is forgiveness, and its last part is freedom from hellfire. أوله رحمة أوسطه مغفرة وآخره العتق من النار. So the Prophet ﷺ divided this month into 3 parts. And the first part, he says, is a time for us to acquire or to receive the rahmah, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And its second part is for us to receive the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And finally, the last part of this month is for us to receive the great reward, the great blessing, and that is freedom from hellfire. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless each and every one of us with His rahmah, with His maghfirah, and His freedom from hellfire. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam continues in his khutbah for this blessed month of Ramadan. He said that there are 4 characteristics we should increase in ourselves in this blessed month of Ramadan. 2 by which we'll please Allah, and 2 other characteristics that we cannot live without. This is a time for us to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A time for us to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our special ibadah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with sincerity. With sincerity. To have this sincere outpouring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To have this sincere munajat, this dialogue, this communication with Allah from our heart as we outpour our feelings to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, begging Him for His forgiveness, begging Him for His mercy, begging Him for freedom from hellfire. And the greatest of believers, the most pious of believers throughout these 14 centuries of our history, they're the ones that have been doing this. Even though they live a life of dedication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would constantly beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the freedom from hellfire. And this is what we should do. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam used to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after the fard salah. Allahumma ajirni minan nar. Allahumma ajirni minan nar. Oh Allah, save me from the fire of hell. And he is the Prophet of Allah, the greatest of believers, the greatest of human beings, the greatest of all the creation of Allah. And still he would beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for freedom from hellfire. What about us? What about us? full of sins and doing all kinds of wrong things, should we not be even more concerned to beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for freedom from hellfire? Ramadan is that wonderful opportunity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the great blessings of Ramadan. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.